Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Kristen's Epic Adventures. Today we're going to talk about my favorite cantrips from the Player's Handbook. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when our new videos are. And give us a thumbs up, give us a like so more friends can find us. Hey everyone, so today we're talking about my favorite cantrips. Now a cantrip is a spell that a spellcaster can use without using any of their spell slots. So there's no need to rest before they can cast them again or anything like that. They can just keep casting every time they have actions available, okay? And again, these are just my favorite. I want to hear from you guys in the comments down below what your favorite cantrips are, okay? These are just mine. It's just a matter of opinion. Let me know if you like these ones too, or if you don't. It's okay. It's an opinion. My first favorite cantrip is Blade Ward. Now, this is on page 218 of the Player's Handbook. It's a cantrip for sorcerers, warlocks, wizards, and bards. It costs 1 action to cast. The duration it lasts is 1 round. The range is yourself, because it's a buff that you actually cast on yourself to help you out in battle. It has verbal and semantic components, which means you need to be able to speak and you need to be able to make motions with at least one of your hands. So you can't be gagged and bound or anything and cast a cantrip like this. Okay, so from the Player's Handbook, it says that you extend your hand and trace a sigil of warding in the air. Until the end of your next turn, you have resistance against bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Now, magic casters often stay away from the heat of the battle and cast spells to do damage from a distance. So this is a pretty helpful buff if you find yourself being a magic caster and suddenly the enemy is right next to you, right in front of you. And it allows you to only take half damage. Resistance against certain types of damage means you only take half damage if you get hit with any of those types. So I thought that was a really, really useful one as a buff to use on yourself against your enemies. So that's my first favorite. Next up is the cantrip Guidance. Now Guidance is a cleric druid spell. It costs 1 action and the duration is 1 minute. The range is touch, so this is not something that you can cast on your party from across the room. You have to be able to reach out and touch them, so you need to be right next to them, like within 5 feet. It also has verbal and semantic components. You need to be able to speak. You need to be able to make gestures with at least one of your hands. Did I say it's on page 248 of the Player's Handbook? I don't know. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. The description is that you touch 1 willing creature, and once before the spell ends, they can roll a d4 and add that number to an ability check. So this is very helpful if someone in your party is about to try to persuade somebody of something, or try to deceive somebody, or even just make an intelligence check to search for something, or a dex check, or checking for traps or anything. It kind of gives them a little bit of an advantage. Now a d4 is the smallest die that we have, and the numbers only go 1 through 4, but honestly, sometimes that's all it takes just to push your roll over the edge and give you a success. So I thought that was a really helpful cantrip, and it ended up on my list of favorites. My next favorite, which is also so fun to say, is the cantrip Shillelagh. I thought that one was a pretty funny name. Shillelagh can actually be cast as a bonus action, and I'll talk about why I think that's important. It's on page 275 of the Player's Handbook. The duration is 1 minute, and it also has the range of touch. And this is actually because you're casting it on your own weapon, so you need to be touching your weapon to cast this. It is a druid spell, okay? And it has verbal, semantic, and material components. So you need to be able to speak. You need to have one of your hands free. And for material components, the Player's Handbook says it requires mistletoe and a shamrock leaf. And then you have to have either a wooden club or a wooden quarterstaff. Now, one of the neat things that druids can do as spellcasters is they can either get themselves a component pouch or a spellcasting focus. Now, for a druid, I believe their staff can be a spellcasting focus. Tell me in the comments down below if I'm wrong. Now, when you have one of these focuses or a component pouch, it allows you to substitute that for any of these little materials. So if you're a druid and you want to use shillelagh, you don't have to like go out into the nature and gather mistletoe and shamrock leaves, or even go to a store and get these things. You can have a focus or a component pouch to substitute for the materials. Now here's what shillelagh does. So according to the player's handbook, it says the wood of a club or quarterstaff you are holding is imbued with nature's power. For the duration, you can use your spell casting ability modifier instead of your strength modifier for the attack. Now, often when you're hitting someone with a melee weapon, you add your strength modifier to your die roll to see if you hit. But when you cast Shillelagh, it allows you to use your spell casting modifier instead, which for a druid is likely going to be a higher number than their strength modifier. So that's pretty beneficial. The other thing that's great about this is a wooden club only does a D4 damage, and a wooden quarterstaff only does a D6 damage. But once you cast Shillelagh on it, you get to use a D8 for the damage. So that's good because it makes it more powerful. You're going to do more damage once Shillelagh is cast on your weapon. It also then considers your weapon to be magical. Now, in Dungeons & Dragons, there's a lot of creatures you'll be fighting that, unfortunately, a lot of times are only susceptible to magical damage. And you don't often find this out until you're already hacking away at them with your sword and wondering why you're not really doing any damage, because your sword is not magical. So this gives you the ability to have your weapon be considered a magic weapon while the spell's in use, which I thought was cool. The other thing I like about it too is that it's a bonus action. So you can cast Shillelagh as a bonus action and then still have your action available to attack. So that was why this one also made my list. I thought it was another really cool cantrip to use, and fun to say Shillelagh. Okay, number 4 of my favorite cantrips. Next I went with Shocking Grasp. Now Shocking Grasp is on page 275 of the player's handbook. It cost 1 action to cast. The duration on this one is actually instantaneous, and you'll see why. The range is also touch. You're going to touch someone and cast this to do damage to them. So you need to be right next to them, within 5 feet. You can't be across the room. This is a cantrip for sorcerers and wizards, and it is verbal and semantic. So you need to be able to speak, you need to be able to make hand gestures. So what Shocking Grasp does, according to the player's handbook, is lightning springs from your hand to deliver a shock to a creature you touch. You make a melee spell attack against the target, which means you're going to roll a d20, add your spellcasting modifier, and compare it to their armor class. Now here's the fun thing about Shocking Grasp. Since we're doing lightning damage, if they are wearing metal armor, and metal conducts electricity, you get advantage on the attack. Now, if you don't know, advantage means you actually get to roll 2 d20s and use the number on whichever one is higher, which is really cool. It does 1d8 lightning damage, and they can't take any reactions until the start of their next turn. Now, another reason this is really helpful is that quite often, if you are right next to someone and then you want to use your movement to move away, if you're next to an enemy, as you move away, they kind of get a free swing at you, okay? But that free swing is a reaction. So this cantrip eliminates them being able to do reactions until their next turn. So not only will you do lightning damage to them, but you then also have the ability to move away without provoking an opportunity attack, which I thought was a really cool thing about the spell and very helpful. So that's why Shocking Grasp made my list. Now, it does 1d8 lightning damage at levels 1 through 4, but once your character gets up to higher levels, it actually does more damage. You get to add more dice. So at 5th level, it does 2d8 damage. At 11th level, 3d8 damage, and at 17th level, 4d8 damage. So that's a possibility of 32 points of damage in one Shocking Grasp cantrip, which I think is pretty cool. I like when the cantrips go up in damage as your level increases. That's neat. Okay, so my last one, and I have to say, even though Shillelagh is fun to say, this is probably my favorite one. My last favorite cantrip is Vicious Mockery. It is on page 285 of the Player's Handbook, and it is a bard spell, okay? It costs 1 action to cast. The duration is instantaneous. It just happens instantly and then it's over. This actually has a range of 60 feet, so you can cast it on enemies at the other side of the room, as long as they're within 60 feet. And it also is verbal only. There's no material components, there's no semantic part of it, so no hand gestures to make or anything. Verbal only I thought was pretty cool because maybe you've been captured and you're bound and you're tied up, but as long as you can still speak, you can still cast a spell, which is pretty funny, and you'll see why. So what Vicious Mockery does, according to the Player's Handbook, is you unleash a string of insults laced with subtle enchantments at a creature you can see within range. If they can hear you, but they don't need to be able to understand you, if they speak a different language, they just need to be able to hear you, they must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or take 1d4 psychic damage and have disadvantage on the next attack. So the reason this was my favorite is this is essentially you hurling insults at someone and doing damage by hurting their feelings, which is really funny and I think gives you a lot of opportunities for role-playing. You can come up with some really funny insults that you could hurl at your enemies. Think Monty Python, think, Google searching funny insults, and have a list of insults available that every time your bard casts Vicious Mockery, what you're actually going to say to this opponent here. And I thought it was cool that it's verbal only because, again, doesn't matter if your hands are tied or you don't have a hand available. All you have to do is shout an insult 60 feet across the room and they take psychic damage. It is only 1d4, which is not a lot of damage, but again, I think it's more funny than anything. But it's also another one that does more damage at higher levels. So levels 1 through 4, it may only do 1d4. But at 5th level, it does 2d4. At 11th level, it does 3d4. And at 17th level, it does 4d4. So I thought that was pretty cool too, that it kind of levels up. The damage levels up as a character levels up as well. So those are my 5 favorite cantrips in the Player's Handbook: Blade Ward, Guidance, Shillelagh, Shocking Grasp, and Vicious Mockery. Let me know in the comments down below which are your favorite cantrips. And if you liked any of these and you want to try them, let me know if you think you might work them into your game. Or if you already have and something really funny happened, I want to hear those stories too. So make sure that you subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when our new video's up. And again, give us a thumbs up if you like this video, and it helps more friends find us. I'll see you next time on Kristen's Epic Adventures.